All right, what's poppin'? We're live, we're in person, we're cooking, we're booking, we're doing all sorts of stuff. I should be live now. If you can hear me and see me, toss that into the chat, that little acknowledgement, and we'll get cooking here. If you are unfamiliar with what's happening in the stream, the super quick is that every 2 weeks I make a video on Patreon. I promise this isn't a plug. Every 2 weeks, I make a video on Patreon about what I'm doing so that with the infrequent updates that happen on the BPS Space channel, I can keep the folks who are actually funding the channel informed of what's going on. But at some point, I do want those videos to get out into the public because I think they're good resources. So every 2 weeks on this channel, I stream what I was doing a year ago. So we're talking about Simplex a lot right now. Soon after, we're going to talk a lot about the solid motor development. And yeah, we can jump into it here. It looks like everyone can hear and see me. Things look good on my end. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video. It is about 18 minutes long. And it's just me about 1 year ago talking about what I was doing. And then after, we can hang out, we can chat, we can do a whole... I don't know. My brain is scrambled eggs today, so let's just watch this video. Hey, patrons, it is late March, and it's time to fire this rocket motor. So the first thing to cover is that there is a live stream happening this coming Friday. That's right, March 31st. It will happen sometime in the afternoon on March 31st. I'm thinking sometime between let's say 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., possibly a little earlier, possibly a little later. This live stream will be for the static fire of the rocket motor that I've been building for the last 3 months, and I'm really excited for it. If you can't make it to the live stream, it will be able to be replayed, and then there will, of course, be some footage. We're going to get plenty of cameras on this thing. I've rented a slow-motion camera. It's going to be awesome. This rocket motor has taken me a really long time, but it's a very, very important step on the path to space. It's a really big step in making my own rocket motors that can basically support what is referred to as a space shot. That's the thing that I want to do in the next few years. And we've started off with this kind of bizarre 6-inch diameter O motor because the final space shot diameter, at least as currently planned, is 6 inches. And oopsie, no, it's not anymore. It went up to 8. Oopsie. And so in order to cut down on some of the development time, I figured I would start at the diameter that I'm going to start with, and then we can just lengthen the case to get a more powerful motor. But anyway, it's time to cover what happened in the last few weeks. So the first thing that I did is I've got this section of the test stand here that needs a bunch of electronics, and it's fine to put things in a breadboard. That becomes really not fine once you put a high vibration motor on a test stand. We are using an Ava flight computer to record the data. We're using a couple other devices that all need to be bolted to this 1515 rail, and I kind of made it a little bit overkill. I printed out these parts in gray PLA just because that's all of the PLA that I have, and then I spray painted them white. One of the harder parts of this was creating what I call the sensor board, and essentially this is a tiny little board that has a couple of different things. First, we have a 16-bit ADC that is an analog to digital converter, and this is going to help us be able to read from the P-taps, or the pressure transducers. The pressure transducers get pushed through this little 250 ohm resistor. We have these massive looking resistors, and they're so big because they're actually hyper precise at 250 ohms, I believe. Anyway, the P-taps push out current instead of voltage in terms of the way that they read signal, and so we have to do a little bit of funky circuitry to actually do that. The other two boards that go on here are the HX711s. I believe that's what they're called, and these are the load cell amplifiers. So we have 2 load cells, as previously discussed. These 2 load cells, one of them I ordered on accident, and it is way too large, and the other one is an appropriate size for this motor, but I figured, well, I've got 2 load cells, let's read from them both. I used a proto board for this because it's not totally necessary to By the way, there is some interesting thought experiment you can do about stacking 2 load cells on top of each other. I do think you slightly reduce the accuracy of each load cell by stacking them. We can talk about it a little bit more later. I think from a theoretical perspective, it's not great practice to do that, but I'm not sure how much it affects it practically. Do everything as a PCB, and especially for one-off projects like this, maximum I build 2, maybe 3 test stands, making a whole PCB is probably not worth doing, especially on the first design. So that's why I spent a bunch of time making this proto board and then just wiring it up by hand. I also, and this is like kind of funny, I bought a label maker recently and it's been awesome. There are so many wires coming out of this thing, and like a lot of the wires are different connectors, which is a really good idea as it stands so that you can't accidentally connect the wrong thing to the wrong thing.
Can I get a quick shout out to Area and Space, or more, I think it's like IVO, or I don't know. Whoever the contractor is that makes Vega, for making the X and Y TVC cables the same and then swapping them, causing the loss of an entire mission. Anyway, shout out.
However, even beyond that, having really clear labeling on the wires has been great. I used 3 pressure transducers for this motor, and I would definitely not do that in the future. The idea was that when I spec'd this out for 3 pressure transducers, I thought that I would like pack one with a little grease, pack one with medium grease, and then pack one with a ton of grease, in order to like catch the different transients of like when the motor comes up to thrust and all of that stuff. But honestly, at this point, I'm not too concerned about the really like high and fast pressure transducer readings, especially with this specific motor. And it ended up creating some problems, which you will see down the road. I don't know if I talked about these problems. I think I talked about them in the public video, but something that may not get mentioned in this video and certainly didn't get mentioned in the public video is that doing the 3 different pressure transducers, which with the HX711 amplifier, meant that we had to like space out the loop of which pressure transducer we were reading loop to loop, because I was trying to get really high logging rates. And ultimately what happened is using the 3 pressure transducers made everyone less accurate, because the pressure transducers were being read at a slower interval because they all had to share like clock cycles for one AVA controller. So I like doubling and tripling down on this. I don't think it was worth it to do multiple pressure transducers, and I haven't done it since. Each one of these little sleds or boards, whatever you want to call it, got mounted to this like 3-fold section of the 1515 rail. So basically like 3 of them together. And then once you attach it to the side rail, it's like 4 of them together. So it's like a big flat area that you can bolt down to. I put 2 different really beefy batteries at the bottom of this test stand. This is quite overkill for what we need to be doing here. But the idea is that like, oh man, what if something crazy happens and like one of the connectors fails? It would be great to just have a second, and we literally have no mass budget. So not a problem to add a second battery there. Also, I have never once ran out of battery on this test stand, and I have let it operate for hours and hours at a time in the desert firing motors. So like super recommend over-speccing your test stand batteries. There, just in parallel. The test stand uses an RFD 900 radio. This thing is great. I use it on most of my rockets these days, and it pushes out radio signals at 900 megahertz at 1 watt, which is a ton of power, and that caused some problems. I don't think I have a whole lot of footage of it, but basically I spent a lot of time troubleshooting power issues, and I ended up frying 2 different radios because of the massive amount of power draw that this thing like consumes. Ultimately, for this, I had to go into the settings and reduce the power output to about half of a watt, or 500 milliwatts, and that fixed the problem right up, and it still gives us like tons of range. As I show some more footage here, I want to mention that it's a good idea to have a radio like this just because of where the electronics are mounted. In an ideal world, you want to have all of your digital recording pretty far away from your test stand, so that if something goes wrong, the only thing that you lose are your sensors. You know, in theory, all of the high logging stuff that happens on Ava, if the rocket motor blows up in an energetic way and like the direction of that energy is unfortunate, Ava could be, you know, somewhat destroyed by this. I don't think that's likely, but it's totally possible. And for any future versions of this test stand, if I ever redesign this, I think I'm probably going to take all of the critical electronics and put them in a box maybe 20 feet away and then just run some long cabling to it. But I still stand by that, by the way. I wouldn't do the test stand the same way if I were doing it again. It has worked. I haven't gotten bitten by it yet, but every test I run, if there's a forward closure burn through and it's in the right, you know, azimuth or direction, it'll just fry those electronics. And so the radio is a really sweet idea. Also, I'll tell you something cursed. If after we're done with this video,
set a reminder on your phone or whatever. Remind me to tell you the most cursed thing about the Simplex V1 static fire. I'm not going to do it now. I'll do it after.
To wrap this point around, basically, we have this radio so that at a really last ditch, like if something goes terribly, terribly wrong, we have some lower rate logging that happens on the ground side with the computer, so that like if Ava, for whatever reason, takes a nap and never wakes up, we have a little bit of data on what happens with the motor. I installed a ton of LEDs on this thing. Definitely not necessary. I mean, for the most part, I think we're going to be firing most of these motors during the day. But having LEDs on this is great because I run a YouTube channel and like there is a non-zero amount of value to making the things I build look good. It did, however, mean that there was a lot of cable routing and soldering to do to get these LEDs to work. I just bought them off of Amazon. Actually, frankly, these LEDs are supposed to take AC current and I'm feeding them DC and like it's fine, it's kind of whatever.
Forgot
but
about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of wiring. It was ultimately worth it, but it did cost me like a full day or two of just listening to a lot of podcasts. Here's a few shots of the completed test stand here. I've got this nice blinking sequence going. I think this thing looks awesome. I'm really proud of the final product here, and I'm really excited to fire a motor on it. I feel like I wanted to make a test stand that I was happy to look at and that I felt was pretty aesthetic, and I think I did that here. Obviously, a lot of extra time gets spent on things that, from a traditional engineering perspective, you don't really need to be doing. But I'm glad that I did it this way, and I stand by it. One thing I mentioned in the last video that I made is that this test stand can be extended. Those 4-foot rods that we have on there now can be added to either by adding another set of 4-foot rods or by changing those 4-foot rods out to an 8-foot set of rods. We don't need that capability now, but we will going forward when it's time to build larger motors to fire before the space shuttle.
Maybe not. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe we just go out to 8 inches and keep it the same length. Anyway, just to jump in here and correct past Joe.
And so we'll get there when we get there. But right now, 4-foot is just fine. One thing I added here is a remote arming setup. And the idea here is sort of as follows. Basically, with a traditional rocket, you insert the igniter and then you walk over to a different box to test continuity and like actually send current through the igniter. And that's all well and good. But for this test stand, because all of these things are self-contained to try and keep transportation and everything simple, you essentially have to arm an O motor as you stand right next to it if you don't have any type of remote arming capability. That makes this unsafe enough that I'm not comfortable with it, and that's for an O motor. When we do the space shot motor, that's a Q, so I really do not want to stand next to this thing when it arms.
Charlie Garcia has a great way of talking about this for what it's worth. An O motor will kill you just as good as a Q motor. Frankly, you can get killed by an F motor if you're at the wrong position, but it is worth thinking harder about safety as you get bigger.
So all I did is I took this little servo that basically flips a toggle switch to arm the stand so that we can do it remotely. I send a command over that 900 megahertz radio, and Ava arms the test stand. Now, because this is a totally isolated command, I can arm the stand manually too. I don't need the servo to be in the loop on that. But especially for large motors where I'm concerned about safety, I never want to put any type of like continuity detection current through an igniter until I am clear of the test stand. All right, and then the last thing that I did here is I hydro tested the motor, and I'm going to try to keep this section kind of short because I got more work to do, so I got to go do that. But basically, the idea behind a hydro test is that you want to put a bunch of pressure inside of the case of the motor to see if it seals. And beyond that, if you put a bunch of air, like a bunch of compressed air inside of this, motor case, if you put 1,000 psi of air in there, the explosive potential of that air is tremendous, especially with a case that's this thin, that's sort of like designed to fail at 1,500 psi. You're kind of uncomfortably close to that safety margin there. So what we do instead is called a hydro test. And as you might guess, it means we fill up the case with water, or in my case, we fill it up with mostly water. Technically, it's a hydrostatic test. Technically. So that the explosive potential, because water is incompressible, the explosive potential is greatly reduced, And it actually makes the load on the compressor a lot easier too. So it's kind of a win-win all around. So what I ended up doing was integrating the forward closure with its O-rings and a bunch of grease. I integrated the nozzle with its O-rings and a bunch of grease. And then I made that nozzle plug that I showed you in the last video. I put the O-ring around that, and I put it inside the nozzle before inserting it into the case, and then I set up to do a hydrostatic test. The first test did not go well at all. There was a bunch of leaking that was coming out of that O-ring, and what I realized is that because of the design, because of where that O-ring was sitting, we were getting more side pressure on that O-ring than axial pressure, at least at the pressure come up point, which basically means that the O-ring extruded out through the nozzle each time. The O-ring would sort of fold in on itself and come out the nozzle. That's a thing I should have caught, but, who cares? You live and you learn. So
who cares?
What I did is I took that plug back on the lathe. I turned another groove in it so that the O-ring couldn't extrude, and then I set up for a second hydro test. Actually, I should note that before I did the second hydro test, I realized that the nozzle and the forward closure were super duper 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 stuck inside of the case. This happens because I picked really squishy O-rings or really big O-rings, and so there's a lot of pressure in there, and every time we thread screws through the case, it creates a little bit of aluminum dust in there, and that makes it really hard too for things to slip past each other. So what I had to do is I tied a ratchet strap around this cemented in pole in the middle of my garage, and then the wheel of my car, which was enough of an anchor point to actually allow me to ratchet strap out the nozzle. I had to drill holes in the nozzle to make this happen. Kind of ugly, kind of not great, but we do what we have to do to make things work. Okay, so this is me set up for the second hydro test here, and this one worked a lot better, but still not perfectly. On the second hydro test, I was able to get the rocket motor up to about 550 psi, and I can verify that because at this point, we're doing this in a different room. I'm sitting in a different room behind a couple of different walls. It's starting to get a little bit dangerous, so I want to make sure that I'm being safe, and I'm monitoring the pressure as we go. We couldn't get higher than 550 psi, though, because there was a bunch of leakage that was coming through the graphite. And this was a really hard thing to understand for a bit, but graphite is kind of a porous material. And so what was going on is all of this air and water was just seeping through the material itself because there wasn't any sealant on the top of it. And at about 550 psi, we were getting things to leak through. I also just want to be really, really, really clear here. The footage that you're seeing is not at 550 psi. This is closer to about 50 psi. Anytime the rocket motor was pressurized, I tried not to walk anywhere near it or basically be in line of sight just in case something failed. The other thing that I was seeing during this test is that when we got up to higher pressures, there was a decent amount of leaking on the bottom. And by decent, I mean about 1 drop of water every 4 to 7 seconds, depending on the pressure. It did not spark a whole lot of joy because I didn't really know where it was coming from. I had a couple of different cameras on the bottom of the rocket motor, but I couldn't really figure out what exactly was doing the leaking. Once I reviewed the footage just a little bit more, though, I found out that it was coming from pressure transducer 3, and it turned out that PTAP 3 was almost just hand tightened. So that was an integration problem that I made. And that's a good reason to, keep some checklists about integration. So here's what I did. I de-integrated the case. I retightened pressure transducer 3, and I retightened all the other pressure transducers.
Oh, not to keep interrupting, but if it's not clear, this process was like a nightmare. This week was hell to keep integrating and de-integrating the case.
Oh, and by the way, doing all of these things requires, once again, doing the whole ratchet strap rigmarole. This is a nightmare of just processes and operation here. But anyway, the other thing that I did is I coated the graphite, or at least the converging section of the graphite nozzle, in a ton of super lube lubricant. I also did this with the nozzle plug. Oh. And this lubricant is much thicker than the water. It's much thicker than the air. It's nice and dense, and so it helps seal that graphite so that the porous material of the graphite is just going to suck in a little bit of the lubricant, and then we're not going to be able to push any air out. So it helps create a much better seal in there. The other thing that
Who among us has not sucked in a little lube?
I started doing here is being just so ungodly generous with the amount of lubricant that I was using around these O-rings. Obviously, the rings themselves get lubricated, but then I started just getting really generous with the amount of lubricant. between the rings in the case. And
just going to pause it here to say you can actually use too much lube, especially with this stuff. It is definitely possible to use too much, and this is way overkill. It actually caused some problems later.
And that helped a lot with extracting all of this hardware later after the test. Anyway, for this last attempt at the hydrostatic test, I got the rocket motor up to about 1,000 psi, which was my goal. It depends what gauge you look at. Some of the P-taps say lower than 1,000, but one of the gauges says 1,000. It doesn't really matter at this point. We have a chamber target pressure of like 460 psi, and we expect up to about double that. So we should be okay at 1,000, and there wasn't any sign of it being close to failure at that. I put cameras everywhere for this test, and there were a couple of fun effects here. I had one camera that was on the pressure gauge of the plug, and because that gauge is sealing just with mostly an O-ring here and a bunch of grease, you can actually see as the pressure goes up, the plug goes further and further out of the nozzle, and the nozzle itself actually moves as well. So you can see things stretching and changing with a different amount of pressure in the rocket motor, which I find very cool. You can certainly see some leaking here, and that's not really a problem for the rocket nozzle so much, but it is more of a problem for the forward closure. But that said, the forward closure did a lot better this time. Pressure transducer 3 didn't leak almost at all. There were like 2 drops over the course of the whole test. Pressure transducer 1 was okay, and pressure transducer 2 had a little bit of trouble. That was the most leaky out of all of them. But what I'm learning is I just need a better tool to tighten down those pressure transducers. The Teflon does a good job of sealing, but you have to really get these things tight in there, and they're at a really tough angle to achieve that. So that's the thing to just understand going forward for the next time that I design a forward closure for a rocket motor. Not too hard to design around that, and also probably don't need that many pressure transducers.
Yep.
But otherwise, the third attempt was the charm for the hydrostatic test. I'm really glad that I stepped through it and tried to improve the results of the hydrostatic every time. It's really frustrating with this stuff, especially with a test that you're expecting to pass on the first try or expecting to be simple. You would think it would just be pretty simple to fill a motor case with a bunch of water and then put some pressure in there, and it turns out, it's not that easy. But it's important to be thorough here. Doing a space shot is really hard, and doing it right is the way to do it easy. But it's kind of like that saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So making sure that we're not like wheeling and dealing and making irresponsible decisions here, stepping through tests and listening to the data will help us ultimately get to this space shot faster. Anyway, once again, we are firing this thing on Friday this week, March 31st. It's going to happen in the afternoon. I don't have a specific time, but you can be updated in the Discord. I really recommend joining if you haven't joined yet. There's a couple of different links on Patreon if you search for them, and I will see you there. It's going to be awesome. Whether you're in there in person, whether you're at FAR in person, or you're just on the live stream, it's going to be really cool, and this is the first big step to space. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your support. Thanks for watching these videos, and may your skies be blue and your winds be low.
Heck yeah, dude. All right, let's hop on over here. Thanks for watching, pals. Now we just get to hang out. If you got questions, if you want to know more details about stuff, I'm going to start looking through comments, and we'll see what's up. We'll see what's popping here. So someone earlier said the grade of graphite. Chris McLeod here. Chris McLeod. McLeod? Anyway, Chris said, I just jumped in, but graphite grade really matters. Oh, hello. Oh my God. Big mic guy. Huge. The little USB cable is starting to get loose back there, and I'm going to have to open this up and put a bunch of hot glue on it or something. Anyway, Chris was saying graphite grade really matters, and he's right. It does matter. I use superfine isomolded graphite, and that's the easiest stuff to machine without having it chip. It's, I think, kind of expensive, but I don't know, as far as graphite goes, you can buy a pretty long rod for not that much. Why did you ditch the camera spinner? I've been thinking of making my own. Good question, Rocketman Andrew. I ditched it because it was heavy and it was too complicated. And also I wanted to control more aspects of the rocket than just the roll. So if we're gonna put a control system on there, we might as well just make the whole rocket not roll. Um, let's say, oh, what was the cursed thing about the simplex test? Yes. Okay. So I do have data from the simplex V1 static fire. That data is only from the telemetry because a glitch in Ava happened on the test stand, and so there's no high rate logging. The data that we have from Simplex is like actually at 5 to 7 hertz instead of 100, which I was looking for. So that's the cursed thing about it. But it's a step in the right direction. What do I want to say here? It's like a way to show that having a little bit of telemetry from your test stand is important. Having a second way to record data as a backup. Yeah. Did I watch Eurovision? I did not. I don't really know what Eurovision is, but I didn't watch it. What about put an aerodynamic control with a camera spinner or a rocket so it's more stable? I mean, again, at that point, you're doing aerodynamic control. You're also controlling a much lower MOI if you're just controlling the camera spinner. So all of the bandwidth and accuracy problems that you deal with on roll control on a full rocket are going to be amplified by like 10, 20 times on a smaller device. How have you been, Joe? Playing any games at the moment? What's up, Moon Man? Howdy. Good to see you. I have been playing Stardew Valley, which I'm very into. It's fixing me. And I played a lot of Population 1. I got one of the Quest headsets a little while ago and love that. Big fan, big Fortnite guy. And that's basically just VR Fortnite. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. What's your favorite material after hot glue and blue tape? Hot tape and blue glue. I don't really. I mean, electrical tape is pretty good. I'm a big fan of. I actually really like graphite now. Now that I have a dedicated eBay lathe that's just for the graphite, I like that. I don't know. PLA is a pretty great material. There's a guy on the Rocketry forum who has a spinning nose cone with deployable canards. I've seen that. Also, what's up, Neutronium? Yeah, his stuff is really impressive. He's the guy who inspired me to do the camera spinner because he has a couple flights on his channel that are like just rock solid. I mean, they look great. Did you see the comment regarding the tent pegs in the last shot? Is clearly, yeah, they have the wrong angle. Yes, the tent pegs have since last year they have changed to a much stronger tent peg or like stake peg thing, and I put them in the right direction now. Does the load cell lose accuracy because the top load cell absorbs some of the thrust through compression and squishing? Yes. As I understand it, the reason it's bad to stack two load cells on top of each other is that imagine the extreme version of this. As Simone Gietch, I think, says this, like, when you're not sure how to figure something out, sometimes it's helpful to understand the extremes of it. So, like, let's say we had 300 load cells stacked on top of each other. If you push a load into that, all of those load cells are, everything has like a tensile strength and a squish factor. So those load cells are going to squish a little bit. And if you want to imagine this in an even stronger way, see, now I don't even know if I believe that. Like, what if you had a spring below the load cell? If you push against that spring, I don't know that you're feeling the full reaction force of what you're pushing against. I think the spring absorbs some of it. I may not be the right person to ask on this, but I do think there's some merit to the idea that theoretically stacking load cells is not a great call. Theoretically, it may not actually be a problem practically. Okay, have you looked at dual stage control with fins for your aero control? Yes, the only thing that I would do for dual stage control is you only control with the most aft fins. So first stage controls the full stack, and then at stage step, they just switch their control systems to only control, themselves. And on launch, the second stage doesn't do any control because it's considered a rigid body with the first stage. Okay, Stardew Valley is a huge W. It is. Are you going to open source this year? Yes, capital Y. Yes, I love open source. It was genuinely like the highlight of last year for me, and I will do anything to make sure I can go to open source again. In fact, I don't have to because I am going. All right, we are a high school that builds P/Q class hybrids. We're slowly working towards a space shop. Your control video is good timing. We're starting to explore active feedback. Very cool, Chris. Be safe. Have you achieved perfection ever? I don't know what you mean, but I don't think so. Okay, eBay lathe, would it have survived the remainder of the space shot at 6 inches? No, no way. The eBay lathe, by the end of Simplex, the eBay lathe was like on its last legs. The carriage lock was gone. I had lost a bunch of accuracy in like other ways. Yeah, the eBay lathe was dying from the start. Okay. Contractor Showdown is supposed to be better than the population one. Oh, interesting. Okay. I tried Contractors. I didn't like it as much, but I think it's just because I'm not like, I haven't played like COD or any like first person shooters in a long time. So I kind of wanted something simple. Oh, Mark, that is the Stardew question. I have not achieved perfection. I don't think so. I'm not very far into the game. What radio protocol do you use for control telemetry? Is it Express, LRS, or some specific rocket niche radio? I use an RFD 900 and I send ASCII text over it. I do not recommend this approach. I think it is sketchy as hell, but it works. I'm not a person who needs to be perfect at building telemetry systems. What I need to know is what my rocket is doing, and you can get a surprising amount of information over that with almost no setup. Are you going to have the rocket be spinny? Oh, man, guys, I'm really behind on the text. We're going to try to blow through some of these more quickly. Oh, the neighborhood cat is here. Love him. His name is Traffic Cone. Anyway, are you going to have the rocket be spinny when it gets really high up? I thought the camera spinner was there to allow for the spin when the air is too thin for fins. This is a complicated question. It is and it isn't. When we get really high up in the atmosphere, the plan is to use a reaction control system to stabilize. Once the fins are no longer effective, we use RCS. But as long as the fins are even mildly effective, the goal is to have the rocket not spin at all until we want it to in space. I think maybe you do like a flip or two or something. I recently did my first black powder rocket, black powder made by me. I'm thinking of not putting AI in my next, because the thing blasted off instead of flying. I don't know, dog. I would not be messing with black powder motors. I would be buying them if I were you. Black powder will light if you look at it the wrong way. An APCP can light too, but it's harder to light it. If I were you, I would not be messing with it. Might have RCS from Fins Lose Control. Let's see. How did you decide between MTV versus BKN03 versus Pyrodex in the HEI? MTV is a little bit better from a heat flux perspective. You can dump a lot more heat in with MTV. There are more concerns with static sensitivity. So to be honest, like functionally, your rocket is not going to fail because you selected BKN03 over MTV. It'll fail for some other reason. Or any well-tested formula and well-characterized setup should get you where you want to go. So long as you understand the risks. Okay, show us your label maker. It's just in the back room. It's a regular label maker. I mean, trust me. I don't know. Okay, I am lost here. Okay. Folks, I keep asking the questions. I will get to them, I promise. Why the 3-prong shape for the remote arming switch instead of just a line that rotates? Josh, because it fit on the servo, and there's no reason not to just keep the other ones. Like, why cut off the other parts of the servo if you don't need to? I heard you mention you started working out and it helped you a lot. Do you use an app, coach, make it up? Ooh, interesting. A non-rocket question. I go back and forth on working out. Right now I'm doing great with like walks in the morning. I go on a walk in the morning. Sometimes there's actually, if you like look over here, there's a little exercise bike that I've got. But yeah, working out is super good for your brain. It helps you in ways that like you don't really get until you do it, and afterward you're like, damn, I did something. That feels great, for your even if it's not for any reason. Like if I sit on that exercise bike, watch a YouTube video and do 20 minutes, I get off of it and it doesn't even matter what I do for the rest of the day. I accomplished something and that feels really good. I don't use an app. I don't use a coach. I do have this ring that tracks my heart rate, and that's kind of fun to like see, but it also doesn't really matter to me too much. I don't know. I have gone through phases of tracking stuff, and mostly what I need to do is just maintain consistency. And so there's all this advice about like the right way to work out, or really you should be doing protein powder after and creatine or whatever beforehand, or like whatever. I don't do any of that shit. It's like every day I have to do something, and I don't always stick to it, but it works when it works. Works when I do it, rather. Okay. Are you planning to release your song that is used in some of your videos? They all sound good. Yes, Will, I have a SoundCloud. If someone wants to find the link, I don't know if you can put links in the chat. SoundCloud.com/Joe-Barnard. I'll toss it unironically. Check out my SoundCloud. Not all the stuff is there. I try to post things from time to time, but I'm a little behind on it. How friendly are NAR Tripoli members toward queer people? I'm nearly ready for my L1 flight, but it makes me nervous. Molly, congrats. Shout out getting your L1. Great call. It really depends. In my experience, I have met several folks who, would not traditionally be accepted in some places through like rocketry. Things like HNS, Hot Nozzle Society, has like parts of it have worked and created good community, and parts of it have worked a little less well. I've never seen like, I can't speak from it personally. Like, I'm a white dude in aerospace. The red carpet has been rolled out for someone who looks like me to do aerospace. So it's hard for me to give you good advice other than just what I've seen other people or my friends go through. I think generally, like, it's a lot better than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But there are definitely like circles of old boomer rocketeers that are like kind of frustratingly not super accepting of stuff. So I wish I had a better answer for you or a more satisfying one. I will say, like, I've never seen anything like overtly problematic. Mostly it's just been like, oh wow, this person thinks some really harmful stuff to people who are like me or whatever. But I've never seen anything overtly like problematic. But I don't know. It's hard for me to speak on it and not feel like I'm unqualified to do that. So I would say give it a shot. See if you can find some people that you can identify with, or most folks are nice and do want to help. It's just that some of them come off a little gruff, and some of them are just old rocket boomers who may not be great at communication. But there are plenty of exceptions to that rule. Okay, do you charge your batteries on the pad? Do you think it's a good idea? We already have an umbilical, but we would like to implement charging and balancing logic. Yeah, I think it's a good idea if you've already got an umbilical to charge your rocket on the pad. Big thumbs up on that. The number of times where I've had to push safety a little bit because the batteries are running out is up there. So if I had charging on the pad, it would make me make some better decisions. And I think for space shot stuff, for really big, even single stage Q motor stuff, like, we should be doing charging on the pad. Or worst case, like, have a way to easily plug it in while you're on the pad, and then you can remove it. You don't need a last minute detachment of an umbilical. Okay, any thoughts on spin stabilization in mono rockets? I mean, it works in the big ones. How do you continuity test the pirate channels on your flight computer? I can't figure out how to do it. You do it with a voltage divider. So a voltage divider, usually you have 1 mega ohm and 100,000 ohms, and you sense the voltage drop between those. I'm not going to do a great job of explaining it because I haven't done, I'm not in the context of electronic stuff right now, but a voltage divider is what you're looking for. And there are lots of good like Arduino tutorials about how to do that. There are even calculators, it's the same type of thing. Or it's a similar type of thing as putting an LED, um, uh, putting a resistor on an LED circuit. It's about controlling the voltage drop. And that's how I do it. And it's pretty predictable. You basically can understand like, oh, I'm only sending 5 milliohms with this setup. But yeah. Let's see. It's surprising how much I already know when I'm in my engineering class because of you. Oh, thank you, Lewis. That's very kind. I appreciate that. Okay. We gotta keep moving. I'm so far behind. Oh my goodness. I have found solid rocket engines to be way more complex in a lot of ways than, say, liquid fuel engines. Yeah, their solids are not just more simple than liquids. I mean, depends where you're coming from. Cold thruster system, still too heavy for your space shot, or an idea for an additional... I think there's nothing too heavy for the space shot. Not right now, at least. I'm way over budget in terms of how much impulse we're carrying on the space shot. And the motors aren't even done in design. But like my plan is to carry like multiple tens of pounds across the carbon line in just payload. So there is plenty to go around. Are you going to use a 6-inch motor or 8-inch motor for the space shot? We're going with 8. Blake says never answer every question. It's too overwhelming for the streamer. I think we're like right on the edge of that. And I do kind of want to answer all of them. If people are down to like show up and give me their time, I do want to like try to address everything. What are your go-to cameras for onboard footage? So right now I'm using GoPro Hero 10 Bones, which I strip apart, and I don't really recommend this approach. I'm going to make a video on how I do it, and that will help if you want to do that. But it's easy to fry them. They're like $300 or $400 when you fry them, so you lose a lot of money if it doesn't work. If you crash your rocket, you're out that money too. Run cam hybrids, awesome, really good. You do need to like do some testing with SD card compatibility, but that's going to happen on every camera. That's my rec for now, is run cam hybrids, or anything honestly from run cam is pretty good. Neutronium says I want my MTV. All right, let's see. Will you be getting the Lego SLS? I want to, but I am not currently in the budgeting state to purchase lots of Legos. There's more... the budget is leaning a little bit more towards ammonium perchlorate than it is Legos right now. Plus, I already have the Lego Saturn V that I haven't built yet. Will you do multiple space shots? How about we do one first, and then we'll see how we feel. Maybe I do one, and then I take a long nap for like 2 years. Are you also interested in model railroading? Maybe a little. Yes! I love model trains, dude. I'm such a big train guy. I don't have a layout set up right now, but in the back room, there were a bunch of trains that I like used my Cold Stone like first job money to buy. I can bring them out sometime. Maybe next stream, if there's enough support, I'll bring out some model trains and we'll take a look at them. But I'm really into N scale. I have a little bit of HO stuff. Big train guy. On the space shot or any other 2-stage flight, what is your plan for recycling the sustainer should it fail to ignite? Kind of same answer as before. I think we get to that when we get there. If the second stage doesn't light, we're not going to just like put it on the pad and then do that. I think we cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these stuff. Bench presses, boosters. I want to be able to bench the wet mass of my booster or sustainer. I won't be able to do the whole space shot, break my arms that way, but that's my goal. Let's see. Are you reading or listening to any books at the moment? Yeah, I can do that. Also a question, could you add strain gauges to the canards to validate the simulation loads? I could. I think at this scale it's overcomplicated. But yeah, like in theory, for sure. So on Audible, I've got, this is not an ad. I do genuinely just use Audible. Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. I'm getting into the Stoicism Ryan Holiday stuff. Big fan. Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. Also, big Adam Grant guy. Love his stuff. The Evolution of Nuclear Strategy by Lawrence Friedman and Jeffrey Michaels. I'm also listening to The Mission by David W. Brown. It's a slower read, but it's about... I can't remember the mission name. Europa Clipper. The Things We Make by Bill Hammack. Awesome book about engineering bias. Really good. Dopamine Nation. This one was a recommendation from Mark Rober. He made a shirtless thirst trap on Instagram a couple of months ago, and I thought it was really funny, but he recommended that book, and I was like, sure, I'll try it. Great book, really intense. Just if you're, a younger listener, it's an intense book. And then there's other stuff. How to Make a Spaceship by Julian Guthrie was really good. Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell. Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Die with Zero by Bill Perkins is really good. Anyway, there's a bunch of good stuff in there. And then in actual print, it's I'm near the end of Chris Hadfield's The Defector. Okay. Do you think the test stand could have survived Mamba? Nope. Nope. No, I don't think so. All right. Do you have any tips on what materials to use in terms of 3D printing components, including design? I think general questions. Also, shout out this name, Big Papa Pickles. Love your name. I don't really think I'm good at general questions like this. Like I'm never really going to have general advice for stuff. I'm good with specifics. But like, if you're looking for general advice on 3D printing, my advice is like, start 3D printing. That's my general advice. Start 3D printing and mess some stuff up and see how that goes. Let's see. I heard John Carmack sponsored your new lathe. Can you tell us anything about your relation with him? Sure. Yeah. The Carmack reveal. John and I got in touch around this time last year because I tweeted something about GPS, and he's into rockets. He's done a bunch of high altitude stuff, but it's like, 20 years ago now at this point with Armadillo Aerospace, which, shout out, got the mug. You can actually still buy their merch online. It's at like Cafe Press or something. I don't know who the money's going to, but there is Armadillo merch online. Anyway, John reached out on Twitter, and then we got talking for like a little while, and then he was like, I would really like to help you. If you need like a machine or something, I would love to sponsor that. And so, yeah, he I feel crazy saying this, but he purchased the lathe, which was not a purchase that I could have afforded, especially given a bunch of other, stuff that needed to be purchased at the time. But yeah, so I really want to get him in a video at some point. It's been very hard to like figure out when each of us is going to be in the same area. But he should show up in a video at some point, and we'll talk about the lathe. Very, very, very generous. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens with my channel and my stuff specifically where I feel like this is, unreal how generous someone has been. I feel that with like the Patreon stuff, and I certainly feel it with Mr. Carmack donating that. It's incredible. Okay, let's see. Will you use one fin for roll control in the space shot? Probably no. Probably want redundancy, so probably 2 fins. Oh my gosh! All right, we have to do a speed round, folks. We have to do a speed round. I'm too behind. All right, here we go. Neutronium. Yeah. Okay. Vamp Rocket says, "Hi Joe, I've been getting into model rocketry for about 3 years now and want to start learning how to make my own computers. Where should I start with that?" Good question. I have some videos on the main channel, the Landing Model Rocket series, where I talk about flight computer design. They're a little out of date at this point, but I think there's some good stuff to think about in there. There's also a video called How Do You Do Thrust Vector Control or something like that. It's one of the Narcon presentations, and it's also publicly available on the channel on BPS.space. And that's that's more than just flight computers, but it's got some good stuff in there. That's where I would start. What's your daily workout? What did you do to maintain your body posture? Oh, interesting. I don't have a daily workout other than just I walk most mornings. I go for like a 30-minute walk. And then if, especially around sunset, I'm a big sunset guy, so I'll go for a walk then too. At times, I've been really consistent with the gym. I am not consistent with that right now, so there's like no lifting weights or anything, and that's where we're at now. How do you find motivation? I cannot bring myself to study things that I deem useless because they're 10 seconds of Google away, and it's a legit problem for me. Woof. That's a hard one. I don't know that I'm the expert on this. The thing that I think about most with motivation is that it's the idea that momentum is energizing and a lack of momentum is de-energizing. Also, shout out. I don't know why I haven't cracked this yet. This is the Dr. Pepper. We got to do one every stream. When things are working well for me, when I've had a test that goes well, or when I cross a milestone, or when, honestly, like when I'm taking really good care of my health, or just trying to maintain the relationships in my life. Like when things are going well, that's momentum, and the momentum is energizing. And then what happens is inevitably at some point I hit a setback, I hit a failure. And if I hit enough of those in a row, or enough things go wrong in a row, you can really easily, get into like some mental health problems. And then you have a lack of momentum. Then, you're not making progress, and it's very easy to stay in that space and sort of spiral down. And you can, like, I think a lot of people are familiar with the idea of like spiraling down. Like, you get into a bad thought in your head and you spiral down and down and down, and it only gets worse. But you can actually spiral up too. It's harder. It's like harder to initiate, but like if you have enough momentum in a row, and that could look like getting yourself some small wins. Maybe it's just 15 minutes a day that you try to put into a tutorial or something like that. Momentum is really energizing. That's a thing to think about with motivation. All right. Oh, here comes my parents' dog. Is he gonna show up? What's up, little man? Why are you behind me? I'm gonna roll over you. Do you want to say hello? Okay. This is Benji. Everyone say hello. I'm taking care of him right now. My parents are having some work done in their house, and so I take care of Benji from time to time. He's a very sweet boy. Right, buddy? He's also very nervous. All right, you can go back down. Oh, there you go. Good boy. All right. How many hours a week would you say you work? I don't know. 70, 60, 40, 80? I don't really track it. I kind of just work until I'm too tired and then I stop. It totally varies. Are you gonna do a more in-depth video on any of your flight computer software? Maybe. It's probably worth thinking about. It's hard to tell a story when you're not physically building something. I don't know. What resources do you suggest for someone who wants to learn to code? Oh boy. I did a Jeremy Blum Arduino tutorial, and I've done no other tutorials. And really, I should have, because my coding is quite messy. But I would say, tutorials. Let's see. Is the planned payload for the space shot just cameras? Do you have anything else you're planning on putting on there? Also, I do hear the train stream. I'll bring some trains out in a bit if you remind me. Anything extra you're planning on putting there? I don't have a planned payload for the space shot. Maybe the McMaster-Carr catalog. Why can't I find a down? Oh, God. This one's a funny question. Hold on. Okay. Could you do the Coldstone Flintstone song? We need a new cover after the Falcon Heavy stream. I do know the song. I'm not going to sing it right now, though. Do you watch any motorsports? I like F1. Is there a way to limit drag for rockets? Yes, make them smaller. Let's see. Obviously, test motors can do pressure reading. Will you be reading the pressure on flying motors? Yes. I think it would be really cool to know the pressure on a flying motor. I think it's valuable data to have. It's not that hard to carry a pressure transducer. So yeah, that's the plan. Can we expect any cooking with Joey B streams this summer? Yeah, for sure. I moved my computer to this room and the kitchen is right there. with the express purpose of doing more cooking streams. So I think it's going to happen. Okay, a couple other comments here. Bill Hammock's YouTube channel is amazing. I haven't seen that. I should look at that. Bomber Mafia is a fantastic book. Have you read or listened to Command and Control? I have. Another really good book. Why can't I find a download link to FinSim? It's like it doesn't exist, but I know it does. I'm not going to touch this subject too much. The person who made FinSim has some convictions about the way that the world works that has caused him to decide the best course of action is to not have FinSim online. If you ask around enough places, I don't necessarily encourage this, but if you ask around enough places, it is not unlikely that you can find someone who happens to slip and fall and send you a link. I am not going to be that person for you, but that's what I'll say about it. If I want to say do a space shot like in 10 years, where should I launch? Should I go to the US or launch in the middle of the sea? I think there's no better place to do rockets than the United States. For better and for worse, the US is just very defense-pilled, and that creates an extremely strong aerospace situation here. So there are lots of places to do rocketry, to fly really powerful stuff that you can't anywhere else on Earth. And I'll also say sea launch sounds like a nightmare to me. There are so many more problems that are made infinitely worse by being on the water. I would not do a space shot from the ocean. What machine did Dr. Pepper sponsor? They did not sponsor a machine. I just really like their product. I'll also say I'll throw hands with you if you're into Diet Dr. Pepper. This is an ongoing debate with me and Braden from Rocket Vlogs, but like, I can't get on board with Diet Dr. Pepper. If you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. If you're going to drink a soda, drink the full Dr. Pepper, you know? What are your plans for the future? Right now, the future is we're going to do a space shot. I have some ideas for what I want to do after, but why don't we focus on the extremely hard thing right in front of us first? What car do you have? I have a little Subaru Outback now. Love my Outback. The Jetta is gone. The Jetta died. Well, it almost died. It slowly was dying. There's a video on the personal channel on the Joe Barnard channel about why. Let's see. I'm behind again. Okay, we're catching up. And I just like talking. It's hard. This is the first stream I've caught live in a while. My question is less applicable now since you've solved GPS, but to track the space shot, why not do outside tracking? I spread multiple LoRa modules and then triangulate position. I think that is a thing that sounds easy to build and is not easy to build. And I am willing to accept complexity in some areas, and that's not one of them. Part of Scout's left leg is broken. Looks okay to me. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. Let's see. Doggy. I'm not doing filament winding anytime soon. Can we get you to do a design review for our HPRs, either feedback or comedic relief or comedic feedback? I'm not really available for like lots of public design reviews right now, but I do appreciate the sentiment. Is there any redundancy update on the electronics for the space shot? It was really cool to see the Ava updates and build stream. I haven't given too much thought to it. There will be at least 2 Avas on each stage and also a COTS board on each stage. But beyond that, there's not any strong updates for it right now. All right. How do you do motor retention? How do you do motor retention if the forward closure is used by a PTAP? All of the stuff that I'm building for the space shot is all going to be sub-minimum diameter, which I'm not going to go on the rant on why that's a stupid term, but that means the motor case is the airframe body. So that diameter, the outside of the motor case, is the airframe, and that means that we don't really need to retain the motor because the motor is the rocket. Okay. There's also spreadsheets out there based on some NACA paper that you can do to calculate fin flutter. Yeah, fin flutter is fairly calculatable without FinSim. FinSim makes it easier. Okay. Excuse me. What's the biggest rocket mishap you've observed live? Was there anything that was really dangerous? I don't know that I can talk about the worst stuff I've seen. I've never seen anyone die, but I've seen things that should have killed people and did not. Not should have, but like easily could have, and very little would have needed to change. Yep. I don't know that I am comfy talking about that stuff. But just be safe. Rockets are really dangerous, you know? It's they'll kill you one way or another, so you got to really watch out for yourself. Have you considered using XTSD instead of SD card for logging? I have not considered that because I don't know what it is. And the logging on Ava works fine. Tea or coffee or both? I'm more of a coffee guy to the detriment of my acid reflux, but I really like coffee. I drink tea sometimes too. Okay. Have you seen Lafayette Systems video on the data link? It's inspiring. I love Lafayette Systems. His stuff is very cool. What's your favorite variety of pickle? I like the spicy ones. I like the little spicy ones. I feel like I haven't seen them in the store for a while, but like the spicy baby dill or gherkins or whatever it's called. Those are really good. Do you expect to see any changes in motor performance while under acceleration in flight versus static tests on the ground? Yes. I don't know what quantity of change in performance I expect to see. If you spin, interestingly, if you're spin stabilized, that will definitely change your performance. You'll burn faster if you're spin stabilized because you're flinging a lot of that internal gas out harder against the wall, so you're stripping propellant off more easily. But I'm not trying to be spin stabilized, so I don't know. It probably changes a little bit. All motors burn a little differently. I'm currently building a TVC monocopter like Sprite in my own time. It uses a cardboard rocket tube. And the propeller gets terrible airflow with it. That is a bummer. I don't have a whole lot of advice for you there. Let's see. I'm looking to join my local rocketry club in Scotland and am wondering if you think I should buy a rocket first or go to some launches and get advice. Ooh, I think buy a rocket. You know, there's not a whole lot of harm that comes from that. If you build it by the instructions, I would say buy a rocket, show up, and have someone take a second look at it so they can make sure that you built it well or it should fly safe. But either way is fine. Either way is totally fine. Are you planning on flying Scout F again or another? No, I am not planning on flying. This guy right here, he's staying on the ground for the rest of his life. I'm too afraid to damage it. And also, it's a lot of work to fly a rocket like that. It might seem like you just like toss a motor in and fly it, but all the code needs to be updated and you got to redo measurements and the TVC mount like needs to be dialed in and aligned. And then you got to make sure the ceramic paddles are good quality. And if they're not, then you got to make new ones. And so I'm not doing it. Okay. Do you think it's worth keeping the form factor to get reasonable tubing parameters out of it for TVC? I'm not totally sure what you're asking, to be clear. Yeah, I don't totally know how to answer that. Where do you use RTV in your motors? Anywhere that needs a high temperature seal. Let's see. What is that nice looking graphing software you showed in the last video? The one where you showed the yaw speed and telemetry data. That is curve.io. If you type into your browser getcurve, GETCURVE.io, you will go to the site that allows you to plot that data. I love Curve. It's great. It's just Grafana, but slightly abstracted, so it's easier to use for most people. Yeah, love it. All right, we're catching up here. How many of your motors will be flight tested before space shot, do you reckon? Okay, here's the plan. I have fired Simplex V2. If you want to see that footage, it's on this channel. There's a shot of me actually firing it. And then if you want more details, it's on the Patreon and then will come out on the main channel. The next motor we need to fire is either Simplex V3 or maybe we call it Complex or something cheeky. But that's the 8-inch Q full diameter, full length space shot motor that needs one static fire that works. If the static fire looks good enough and is close to the data we expect and doesn't blow up and doesn't burn through, then we don't build another motor for a hot minute. Because after that Q, then it's time to fly some stuff. And flying some stuff involves a ton of development. Avionics bay, nose cone, fins, recovery stuff. Like, there's a bunch of really massive development that has to happen before we fly any of those motors. We're going to fly at least one single stage Q to like 100 to 150,000 feet. My guess is we probably want multiple single stage subscale flights. But it's all going to depend on the data we get. Like every time we take a step, I take the step and then I look back and I'm like, how close was that to what I thought it would do? And as long as the answer is pretty close or close enough, then we can move forward. But the number of burns that we need, the number of test flights we need is all going to depend on how those flights go. At least one, probably more for each step. All right, how hard is it to get an L3 cert actually? Lumineer makes it look hard, but Send It makes it look easy. The rocket is not the hard part of the L3. Building a simple L3 rocket is pretty easy in terms of like if you want to do a composite fin can, if you can use commercial altimeters. It does not have to be hard. The hard part is the people. Specifically getting the 2 TAPs or L3 CCs that you need to sign off on your project and agree that things are good to fly. Some folks are very, very into the documentation. They want a whole multi-page document about how exactly your build went. Ultimately, although I wrote that for Lumineer and I wrote it for Send It, the TAPs that signed off on Send It didn't look at my documentation. I made a bunch of documentation. I sent it off to them. And then on the day, I had to switch one of my TAPs to someone else. And he never saw the documentation. He just looked at the rocket and was like, this looks good. It totally depends on the people that you get. Do I have the name for the space shot rocket? Yes, and I'm not telling you now. We'll talk about it once the time comes. I have a name. I'm really stoked about it, but it'll be a secret for a while. Do you miss your old house? How do you like the new house? So this is the same house I've been in for a while, but I miss my house in Nashville. I liked that place a lot. Any thoughts of making a TVC rocket that you can just grab and fly? Something like Sprint, maybe. Neutronium, do you mean like just for me so that every now and then I can do a test flight? Because that's a nice idea. Yeah. I could also, if you're talking about making like a product, I don't know. I did not really enjoy selling things. I found it much easier to just do videos. How did you decide between O-rings versus RTV? O-rings are kind of RTV. They're vulcanized rubber and they're high temp silicone. And also I use both. There are actually 3 pressure seals on each end of the motor at this point. There's a pressure seal with a lot of RTV between the closure or the nozzle and the liner. And that, in theory, could seal pressure, but I don't focus too hard on making sure that's a really tight seal. I just load that situation up with RTV and call it a day, because then there are 2 backup O-rings. And it costs nothing. It costs you almost no extra space. I see no reason to not put O-rings or multiple pressure backups on your thing. Like while I was integrating the forward closure for Simplex V2, I split an O-ring, and that's possible. And if you didn't catch the splitting O-ring, you would need a backup. You might want 2 backups. So I would do both. Okay. Have you considered using grid fins instead of regular fins? Nope. I understand people like grid fins, but rockets can fly with grid fins, and I'm not interested in doing it. Um, how far away are you from firing Simplex V3 / Complex? Chemical wise, I am taking a break because I spent a lot of money on the last two motors because Simplex V2 was actually two motors, not one. So I don't know. I would like to fire it by like the end of the summer, maybe. Ideally, I want to do Meat Rocket first. Meat Rocket has been on the docket for so long, and I just gotta do it. It's always 2 months away until it's not, and so like I set a date for it. It's in July. I don't know how well the date will hold, but I've got to start working toward it. So yep. What you doing right now? Is it for fun or it's part of your space shot rocket company? Both / neither. I do what I do because it is what I do. That's a really bad answer. This is a job at this point. Through Patreon and sponsorships and ad revenue, I make enough to pay some bills and keep doing projects, which is incredible and it's super cool. It has some downsides too, but on the whole, it's a very cool thing. And that's what I do. Any plan on what to do after the space shot? Yes, but not super fleshed out. Is it a cheeky name or a serious one? I think this is talking about the space shot name. It's a serious one. Cheeky names are more fun, but I don't know. I think it's okay to name it something serious. Okay, gonna skip a couple of these. Is the SAMD 21 powerful enough for inertial navigation? Yes, because I use it for that. Do you consider... Oh, ads will run shortly for some viewers. Okay, I'll let you know. It's coming up in 50 seconds. Do you consider using some type of piston ring compressor tool to avoid damaging the O-rings and make it installation a little easier? I haven't done that. I have considered it. I think it's a good idea. All right. How do I find rocketry groups near me? Google. Also, the rocketry subreddit is really good, r/rocketry. If you put where you are. And then, the NAR and EETRA, like on their website, you can find clubs near you. Let's see. Can you go into more detail on letting exhaust meat scar inside of the case? I don't think I know what you mean, Samuel. Can you ask it again? Daniel says, how satisfying is it to break a massive propellant crane in half? Not as satisfying as I thought, because I thought I could break it over my leg. But you stomping on it did a pretty good job. What's your preferred EDA and CAD software? Right now, I do a lot of my CAD in Onshape. I have in the past used Fusion 360, which is also a good option. And I also have used FreeCAD. I haven't used it in a few years, but I did not have a great experience with it. As for EDA, I've done actually all of my stuff in Eagle, but I know that KiCad is great and it's free. So I don't know. The software you use does not matter. I stand by this with basically everything. It doesn't matter what tools you use. It matters that you know them well. When I made very small scale, we would sometimes do annular or tube fins. I have not done tube fins. I think they're cool though. Joe, Meat Rocket is in July. What Joe actually means. Meat Rocket is in November. It's possible that's true. I can neither confirm nor deny. Okay. Have you considered PTZ cameras to film the launch from more angles? I have not. I want higher quality than that. Let's see. Hello, this is Zesty. What's cooking? What's cooking, Zesty? All right. I think we're almost caught up here. What is your opinion on using inertial dead reckoning as a supplement to GPS? Depends on your application, right? If you're in a situation where GPS should work really well, I mean, I don't even know how to answer that. I think for the space shot, you kind of have to. The space, like I've been doing more and more dead reckoning on my flights and relying less and less on GPS because it's just been really unreliable in high G environments. And that's not a problem that can like easily be solved without um, much better timing crystals on the GPS chips or whatever. And like, you don't really care about GPS unless you're trying to verify apogee, which for a space shot is like a full 2 minutes down the road, or trying to find it when it lands, which is like a lot longer. Excuse me. How many people will be working on the space shot rocket? I don't know. How as many people as we need to get working on it. Thoughts on Blender for CAD? I still maintain that the best tool is the one you know, but Blender is not really a CAD software, so I wouldn't use Blender for CAD. You could probably make it work, but if you're trying to, get into any professional engineering field, Blender for CAD is not going to get you as far as SolidWorks, Onshape, Fusion 360, even FreeCAD is a better option to show people that you know tools that are being used. Can you go into detail on letting exhaust meet the case metal for Simplex V1 at the nozzle end? Yeah. Okay. Right. So you've got the case of the rocket motor, right? This is the outside case. It's going to be hard without a whiteboard. You get the case, and then you get the liner, and then you get the propellant. So they're like 3 layers. It's like an onion or Shrek. And the liner material for most rocket motors is something called either linen phenolic, canvas phenolic, or paper phenolic. Linen, canvas, or paper are common substrates that are infused with phenolic resin, and they make really good ablators. But the downside of those is that they are pretty brittle in most cases. And that means that they'll crack really easily. That means that they're not good pressure vessels. Like a thing that makes aluminum a decent pressure vessel is that it stretches, it moves around a little bit. It's kind of a gummy metal, so it can tolerate a decent amount of yield before it pops. The liner material in traditional rocket motors or traditional hobby rocket motors is usually not flexible enough to hold pressure. So if you seal against both ends of the liner, instead of the case holding the pressure, the liner will be holding the pressure because it's sealed at both ends. So you need to let gas leak around the bottom of the liner where the pressure is lowest. The pressure is going to be highest at the top of the liner near the forward closure. You need to let gas seep around there so that the case is the thing that gets pressurized, not the liner. If the liner gets pressurized, it's going to crack. Maybe it cracks somewhere that doesn't matter. Maybe it cracks somewhere that really matters. That's why you want to let it come around the edge. All right. I thought this channel was out building a rocket company out a rocket engine, but do you know any other... Dog, I don't know what you're asking. If you could attend a concert featuring any 3 artists or bands, what would be your dream lineup? Honestly, dude, I'm not a big live music guy. Crowds stress me out. I'm like definitely an introvert. Casey Musgraves, I saw a while ago. She was awesome. I've heard that Muse shows are really good. They're like total laser shows. It's gonna be. I think those are sweet. Yeah, I don't know. Not a big live music guy. I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. Just not for me. How do I calibrate an accelerometer? That is a question for Google. There are lots of details about things that you can find on Google. I'm happy to help you with more specific things. Any ideas what your next project will be after you make this space shot? Maybe we do a little liquid hopper? I don't know. We'll see. We'll focus on the space shot first. How will the space shot be held stable for launch? I imagine you won't be using standard rail buttons. Yeah, but you can still use a rail. You know, even the big sounding rockets that go out of NASA Wallops use a big rail. All right. Do you have any ideas for redundancies for stabilization? I don't know. Make it work is my idea right now. There are lots of specifics that I can't really... I mean, it seems very overcomplicated to put 2 sets of control surfaces on every fin, and at some point it's just like, all right, just do a really good job making sure your system is going to work. Have you considered camera gimbals to film the launch from more angles? No, there are so many projects with this space shot that could become a year-long rabbit hole. And I've tried digitally moving cameras or using servos or stepper motors or whatever to move cameras enough times to know that like it is really not that simple. Using computer vision is not fast enough for the high G stuff that happens on these rockets. There's no reason not to put a human out by a camera that you want to track the rocket and let them track the rocket. And obviously we're talking about putting people far away. But I see no reason to at least invest heavily in, a system that tilts the camera up. Just shoot it from a wider angle and crop it, or have a human operating it, because the stuff with rockets is like so. At this scale, it's so dynamic. You never have I'm never going to have a fixed launch time because it's all so dependent on all sorts of things. Anyway. Well, I'm planning to make some flight computers with my friend. We are planning to sell them. What would be your advice? Make the computer first, then think about selling it. You can design the computer with sales in mind, but finish your product before you sell it. Do you send both GPS location and location determined by dead reckoning to telemetry in case you lose GPS? What I send down to the ground is both the raw lat lon and the Kalman filter. So the answer is yes and also kind of no, because the Kalman filter does a lot of error checking on the GPS. It's usually pretty reliable. It's not always reliable. Yes, mostly. Your hot glue rocket was very funny. If you had to make a rocket out of another wacky material, what would it be? Thank you. Blue tape, for sure. I feel like that would just be on brand, too. If you got the opportunity to launch a CubeSat for free, would you? It's not really on the tech tree right now. Life is full of opportunities, and a really important thing to learn is which ones to say no to. And it's not really on the tech tree for me right now, or the priority list to do that. So I would probably pass it off to someone else and say give this person an opportunity. I don't need it. Why did you need to use phenolic to protect the forward closure? As far as I know, it's not needed. It may not be needed, but I just feel like there's no reason to not try and protect any surface that can melt. Technically, the chamber pressure or the chamber temperature is far hotter than you need to actually melt aluminum. So I see no reason to expose aluminum that can start melting to it, even if it's a really thick piece of aluminum like a heat sink. No reason. Really easy to turn a phenolic round and just get a little disc out of it and toss the disc on there, and the disc does a great job. You said previously that you wanted to deploy a box with a camera on it for the space shot. Will you control it using RCS or reaction wheels, or not thought about it too much? I've thought about it a lot, but there is no design. So we're in good idea land where everything works really, really well, and that means it has RCS, it has, a spot tracker, it's got a parachute, it's got 8 different GoPros, and a reaction control and a reaction wheel system. Right now it has everything because there's no design. Half of the stream is just people using Mr. Bislington as Google. Half of that's on me. I got to get better about picking which questions to answer. Have you considered using a gas reaction control system? I've done it. It's on the channel. It wasn't very good, but I would like to do another one. Also, thank you, Robert. Robert, for the super chat. How come I can't thumbs it up? Do I heart it? There we go. Okay, I hearted it. Thank you, Robert, for the SLS support. Also, thank you, Paul, for the super chat earlier. Okay. Have you considered how you will point the directional telemetry antennas while the rocket goes out of sight? Yeah. You point it up, because that's where the space is. Thoughts on hybrid propulsion? Yeah, thumbs down. Does your cat need super chats? My cat is actually doing really well. I appreciate the thoughts. He's doing a lot better these days, so he does not need your super chats. He certainly won't turn them down, but he's not sick right now. I'll let you know. Maybe next time. Yeah. Let's see. Were there any differences between the different holes you drilled through the phenolic protection for the pressure transducer? Great question, Kendrick. I did not see any differences. I think there's probably a too small part of this. Like, you could make the hole too small because phenolic gets a little larger when it chars up. That char layer gets a little bigger. I assume the pressure would have no trouble still going through that, but I don't know. A 1/4 inch hole, an 1/8 inch hole seems to do just fine. Do you have a recommendation for onboard cameras? Depends on your comfort with electronics. I think anything from RunCam is pretty good right now. All right. Did you see the Aurora Borealis? I could not. I could not see it, at least not with the naked eye. Are you into astronomy or astrophotography? I am not. I mean, I have nothing against it. I already have too many hobbies. If the space shot fails, will you still continue the project? If it doesn't work on the first try, I will be the least surprised person. Yeah, the space shot is not going to work on the first try. It doesn't matter how hard I try. Like, you can't go into something like that being like, I'll just get it right, you know? Thoughts on 360 cameras for the space shot? My thought is not that interested. I think I get a suggestion from a lot of folks of like, why don't you just put a bunch of cameras around the rocket, let it spin, and stitch it together afterward? And that is it's a well-intentioned suggestion that does not actually work. Shutter speed needs to be really high for that to work, and you need a global shutter for that to work. You cannot use a scanning shutter. So when you see rolling shutter effects like that, that will be a mess on the space shot if it's spinning. The shutter speed will be a mess if it's spinning. If it's a cloudy day, I know you're not supposed to launch in clouds, but you can get waivers that say you can. Like, if it's a cloudy day, that your shutter speed might be messed up. I think it's not. I'm not interested in it personally. Does Benji need super chats? If you super chat for every, I don't know, let's say like every $5, I'll give Benji a treat. How about that? And we'll make sure it happens on the stream. Okay, let's see. He finally cut off with the chat. I did. All right. We are also making a piece of software for controlling it. Okay, would you go to Mars? No, dog. I love it here. I love it on Earth. I'm very happy. Earth has all of the cool shit that I like, and Mars has none of it. I will happily build stuff that goes to Mars, like machines and robots and doodads, but I'm not going. I'm staying here for my whole life. I think it's noble and great that there are people who want to go to Mars and die on Mars, and I love that for them. Everyone gets to make their own journey, and my journey involves staying very solidly on Earth. I don't even really want to go to space. I don't have like a deep desire to like see the Earth from space. I want to put cameras in space, but personally, I'm like not that interested in going there myself. Okay, Mar Tiger says, "This is your reminder, Joe." Oh my gosh, is it the train? I think it's the train reminder. Do you guys want to see my model trains? I'll go get him. I'll be right back. Fellas, we are so back. Okay. We are unbelievably back. Look at this. This is not just trains. This is trains 4. There's a bunch of boxes. This is one of several. This, I think, is most of the rolling stock. So that's engines, cars, and stuff like that. So most of what I have is N scale. I've got the Amtrak Superliner. I can't remember if this lights up. I think it does light up inside. We can take some of these nice ones out. Like this one's beautiful. This one's Fox Valley, and Fox Valley Models does like really detailed stuff. So this is not CBS, CSX boxcar. It's a little stuck in there. The Fox Valley stuff is so detailed. I weathered it a little bit too, so you can sort of see there's a little bit of weathering on it. I will not focus. Got to do like the beauty tutorial thing. Anyway, whatever. But the Fox Valley stuff is so nice. There's this grate down here that is actually, wow, this will not focus. Okay, so I've got that. There's a boxcar. There are a couple other things. Where's like an engine? I've got this. I got this for my birthday when I was in high school. This is an Atlas flat car, but it's got it comes with the wood. Like it comes with the blocks of wood that you can put on it. Very cool. I have a set of intermodal cars that I painted to look like I had 2 different sets. They were all yellow, and then I painted them and did a couple of mods. I have, okay, here's a nice coach, nice Amtrak coach. This one definitely lights up. Where are the engines? Oop, that's coming out. Hold on. Well, it's getting a little messy. Oh, here we go. Now we're cooking. Okay, couple of cool things. This is from Hobbytown, USA. It was $28. This is an N-scale Brill trolley, and I made a mod to it. So I switched over to DCC, which is Digital Command Control. It's instead of just sending power on the rails, you're sending power and comms. So you need a transponder in every thing that you want to work with it, because it's sending... Am I going to be able to get this out? These things are really delicate too, so it's super nerve-wracking. You know, I bet this will come out, but you'll have to just take my word for it that there's a little transponder that I put in here. Okay, now I really want to get this to come out. Hold on. Trains with Joey B. Oh, all right, I'm not going to do it. I'm too nervous, and I don't want to hurt it. But then, there's a couple of others. Okay, so this is another Fox Valley model. Very, very nice. This looks like a Gevo. ES44AC. Yeah, so it's GE. I think I'm coming around to the idea that the EMDs are the superior locomotives, but GEs, I think, are just more popular now. Okay, so it's CSX. A lot of my stuff is CSX because I grew up in the Northeast, and so like that was what was locally around. Why will it not focus? Anyway, it's a beautiful model, and it's DCC. So if I take the hood off, I would love to just show you the electronics inside because it's really interesting. Maybe we'll do it for another one. This one I don't think has sound, but I do have one that does have sound. Is everyone enjoying Trains with Joey B? Okay, so somewhere here, there's a nice Conrail. Somewhere is, I believe it's an EMD. Yeah, here we go. The SD70 Mac. This bad boy. Okay, so this is an EMD. This is not GE. The model quality is a little bit less. It's not the beauty of the Fox Valley models. I don't know who makes this, because it's not in the original packaging anymore. Here we go. Oh, these things are so delicate. It's crazy. So we'll leave the walkway on. Yeah. So check this out. So there are LEDs at the front and back of the board. Here's an LED and here's an LED, right? And then you can see this one goes through what is basically a fiber optic thing to go to the ditch lights there. Very, very cool, but it does mean you can't flash the ditch lights, which is fine. Then under here, that's a speaker right there. And then this is the decoder. It's a digital command control decoder. I think it says SD70 on it somewhere, but yeah, super, super cool. What kind of processor is it? Atmel 688L? I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for Trains with Joey B. It's been a little slice of heaven. One day I'm going to burn out on rockets. Something's going to go really wrong, and I'm going to be like, that's it, I'm done. And then I'm just going to do model trains for the rest of my life. These things have not seen the light of day in a long time. And, one day I hope to have a kid and do a bunch of train shit. That's when I'll get them back out. Anyway, okay, so those are the trains. We did that. Thank you all for encouraging it. And did not read the chat. All right, I've missed quite a lot. Let me see if I can catch up. All right, I'm probably going to skip a bunch of this stuff. People are into the trains. Let's see. TVC model trains, train in the space shot. What went wrong with the GoPro Hero 10 Bones? A lot. We'll have a video on it. All right, let's see. Stream will continue forever. Yeah, I mean, we'll probably cut it off at some point, but I'm having fun. Is this live or just a replay? This is very much live. I mean, I guess it's live delayed by 10 minutes because I can't keep up with the chat. We need a Joey B Starship update. Oh, did I already read that? Do you have any inspirations for moving into commercial rocketry and deploying satellite payloads? Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. I don't really want to do customer payloads. It doesn't sound very fun. And not that everything you do has to be fun. But like, if my rockets fail, arguably they're more successful online. People love when shit blows up. People go nuts over it. The videos where things fail are the ones that do better. So I'm not making stuff fail on purpose because it certainly feels bad for it to happen and it's expensive and whatever. But no one is showing up to be like, you idiot, you lost my payload because of your incompetence. What actually happens is I get to go on YouTube and be like, we learn through our failures, and it's good to make progress and push your limits and stuff like that. So I have no interest in doing that for a customer. All right. Let's see. Lockheed Martin seriously considered replacing the AJ60A SRB on the Atlas V with the hybrid rocket motor. That's cursed. That right there is some cursed stuff. You got a mosquito bite on your arm? I don't know, dog. I got eczema. That's what it is. How do you... Oh, something spicy about Simplex. I already did this, but it's that Simplex had no local data recorded on the test stand because of a programming bug. And so I just took the live stream telemetry and got the 7 hertz of data out of it. Are model trains an old hobby, a sidelined hobby, or just an off-camera hobby? I really liked model trains when I was in middle school and high school. Actually, I got my first train set when I was 5, and it was like the focus of my childhood for a while. Um, and rockets are the newer hobby for me. But this is not really a hobby now. Like this is now a job, and I still love doing it. But yeah, I haven't set up a train layout in a long time. I would like to. It's just that it doesn't. That's also an expensive hobby. Trains are not super cheap, and they're not getting any cheaper. Um, so it hasn't been a hobby for a little bit. Um, let's see. Wow, doesn't answer me. Dog, there's a bunch of questions in the chat, and I'm not going to read them all. I appreciate you showing up, but I can't get to everything. Um, let's see. Even just a small Starship update. There's nothing to. Oh, I get it. I get it. There's nothing to update on Starship. That project has not moved, and I'm talking about my model for Starship. If there were things to tell you about it, I would tell you, except that I have done zero work on it since February of 2022. So I could show up and show you a half finished CAD model that will remain half finished for a long time. Starship is kind of not happening right now as like a BPS project. Um, let's see. Is there a secret way of getting money? Yeah, crypto, dude. I'm not into crypto. I don't know. I don't know exactly what you're asking. Maybe like go rob a bank. Um, what is the ROI on an exploding rocket video? Depends how big it is. Um, if you can tell a good story around it, you can make your money back. But it depends how big it is. Like if the Q motor fails, I will need to make, I don't know, $3,500 back, and that's a little harder. But yeah, no, and because the Q motor won't just be the Q motor that fails. If the Q motor fails, it's definitely taking the test stand with it, and that's not no money. I don't really want things to fail, but there is a small silver lining in doing YouTube in that when they fail, you can pull some good content out of it. Were you afraid about Simplex exploding or doing something bad? Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't been afraid for my safety around those motors. I mean, apart from the normal stuff, like when you're handling rocket motors, you have to remember that you're handling stuff that can light on fire and go south really quickly. But and like I'm afraid for the motor exploding when it burns, but also I'm firing these motors from bunkers that are 500 feet away. So I'm afraid, but like it's not for my own personal safety if I'm not near it. Um, okay, let's see. I'm going to skip a couple of these. Ba, 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 ba. I mean, I think I think that's most of the stuff here. I've answered some of these questions a couple of times, so I'll probably skip it with no offense meant. Um, yeah, but I mean, I think I'm pretty cooked on the stream. So I will be back here again in 1 to 2 weeks. I'm not going to keep a super tight schedule on it. But yeah, 1 to 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens. I have one more Patreon video from Simplex doing a static fire. And so, like, let's say if I stream that in late May, there may be a little bit of time where I don't have one of these streams because last year I took a break and made some videos. Anyway, I don't know how to explain what I mean, but yeah, I'll be back here soon enough. I'll try to announce it when it happens and give you at least a day of heads up. If you are a patron or in the BPS Discord, I try to announce it when it happens. I also post it on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called. And yeah, maybe I'll do a cooking stream soon too. That would be fun. Thank you all very much for joining. I appreciate you guys spending time with me. I'm sorry I can't get to all the questions. And for some of the questions just get asked enough times that I don't want to answer them 30 times in a row. But yeah, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I have a lot of fun doing these streams, and I'll see you again soon. This has been a fun little one. Thanks for letting me show you the trains, too. That was fun. Love the trains. Big train guy. All right, pals. Enjoy your Monday. Happy May 13th. And I will talk to you all soon.